right, I haven't had a chance to make one of my $15 decks in a little while, and while the fan art is scrolling by, again, thank you to everybody who throws fan art into the Discord, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a commander who I've just had my eye on for a really long time, and I've really wanted a chance to build. This guy is bel'akor, the Dark Master. Demon tribal, demon typal, demon kindred, whatever makes you angrier, I guess. I adore this guy. Grixis is a fun commander set. It tends to lead to a lot of control. Not as much as control as Esper, but enough for my taste. And this guy, I love big dirtily commanders. I love commanders that have flying on them. He just does everything I want. He does draw power. He has a cost associated with him. He's got control on him. Like, the boy is thick. He does all kinds of shit. So, let's talk about him. So he is a 6 mana Grixis and 3 colorless commander, 6 power, 5 toughness, costs us all of 27 cents, so he's perfect for the deck challenge, and he has flying. And if he enters the battlefield, draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of demons you control. He himself is a demon, so that number will always at least be 1, and whenever another demon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. This means we want to build a deck that is chock full of big demons that have control to slow our opponents down, because we ourselves are going to be doing everything in our power to get these guys online, and we're of course going to need to be able to ramp up to this guy as well, which is going to be a bit harder to do. So let's go ahead and first talk about the ramp section. Probably the most important part of a deck where a commander costs 6 and we don't have green. My mouse flipped over the Hedron Archive on accident there, so I guess we're starting out with Hedron Archive. 4 mana, tap to add 2 colorless, and also sack it to draw 2 cards. Then we have Fire Diamond and Charcoal Diamond and Mer Convert. All of these are artifacts that cost 2 mana and tap for our deck's colors. Scampering Surveyor can get any basic land out of our deck as well. Sky Diamond is another mana rock. I forgot to mouse over it. Sorry about that. Warren Power Stone comes into the battlefield tapped, but it taps for 2 generic mana, which is perfect for a deck like this. We are a huge mana deck, like an obscenely high mana deck, so we have to have as much good ramp as possible. Arcane Signet costs 2, and I'm so happy that the card was like 80 cents when I started doing this series, and now, because we have this plethora of precons, which I have opinions on, it has made Arcane Signet cost less, so it's easier to shove this in decks finally. But yeah, add 1 mana of any color that our commander has in its color identity. Ornithopter of Paradise, 2 mana dork, add 1 mana of any color. Fractured Power Stone, add 1 blank mana, 1 colorless mana, and Solemn Simulacrum, add 1 land from your deck to the battlefield, 1 basic land, and then if it dies, draw a card. We, of course, have some sacrifice synergies because we are a demon deck, so Solemn Simulacrum is going to get abused like the little bitch he is. Now, we also have the Rainbow Rock, because the Rainbow Rock goes in every deck. Honored Heirloom, taps for 1 mana of any color, and we can pay 2 to exile a card from anybody's graveyard. Super easy way to keep Reanimator players honest. Not that we ourselves won't be reanimating things, but come on, we're demons. Who says we have to play by everybody else's rules? We write the rules of the contract. That is how demons work. So, now, what are the big demons we are trying to get out? The deck has 36 creatures. 25 of them are the demons the deck wants to have, so a full quarter. Let's go ahead and start with one who's not a demon, but is a devil. Raphael the Fiendish Savior. He says all of our other demons get 1/1 and lifelink, which is very important for a deck like this. At the beginning of our end step, if any of our creatures are put into the graveyard, make a 1/1 red devil creature token that can deal 1 damage to any target if it dies. That's fine. We really have this in here because he does a great lording ability, and that lifelink is super helpful in keeping us alive. But let's go ahead and start with our demons draw package. We have a 6-card draw package because our commander has draw attached to him. Beginning with Kothafed Soul Hoarder. Whenever a permanent owned by any other player is put into a graveyard for the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life. We also have another demon that does the same thing, basically. Harvester of Souls. Anytime another non-token creature dies from anybody, we get to draw a card. Then we have the Indulgent Tormentor. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card unless target opponent sacrifices a creature or pays 3 life. Now, because our commander commander does have a way to burn people, we can make this a harder and harder bargain for people to take over time. Then we have hostile negotiations. It's fact or fiction, but we get to throw 2 piles, one face up, one face down at everybody, or at one person, and then ask them, do we get door number 1, door number 2? If we get door number 2, then, you know, they know the cards that are going into our graveyard, and we know the cards going into our hand. Read the card. It looks more complicated than it is. Hidetsugu and Kairi. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, put 2 from the top of your hand, or into your from your hand onto the top of your library, and when this dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery card, of which our deck contains 16, we may cast it without paying its mana cost. Then we have Solkanar the Tainted. At the beginning of our end step, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Draw a card, or each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, or it deals 3 damage to one other target or creature or planeswalker, or exile it, then put it on the battlefield under an opponent's control. Now, what we're going to be doing with this primarily is cheating. We are a demon deck. This card looks like it's going to be passed on to an opponent eventually. That's never going to happen. We're going to blink it. We're going to sacrifice it. We're going to do something to it before it manages to disappear into the aether of our opponent's stuff. So never you mind when this demon is around. Also, because we have such big demons, we do need to make sure that we get more value out of them. As such, we have Reflections of Littjara. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. When you cast a spell of that type, copy the spell. Now, you notice a lot of our demons are legendary, so they will die when Reflections of Littjara is out, but that doesn't hurt us too much because bel'akor says, I don't care. Anytime any other demon enters the battlefield for any amount of time, burn people, burn just creatures, destroy everything. It doesn't matter if we're losing demons with Reflection of Littjara, we are always going to get value as long as bel'akor is out. And it's not like we don't have demons that don't necessarily have the legendary status. If we go to our burn section, which begins with this lovely little card here, the Plague Drone. This is one of our win cons. At least burn in general is one of our win cons. Plague Drone, if an opponent would gain life, that player loses that much life instead. So if people are playing the bad gain lands, if people are playing an aristocrat strategy, anything like that, Plague Drone just sits here and ruins their life. Then we have Carter Doom Scourge. Anytime it enters the battlefield, we do a soft version of Goad onto everything our opponents control. And then if any of their creatures die, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. This is a thing that triggers no matter what. So, like, if I swing at somebody with Carter Doom Scourge and then do instant sacrifice on it, it will burn everybody and then you'll gain a life. It's any attacking creature, yours or anybody else's. Then we have Orca Siege Demon. Trample. Whenever another creature dies, again, Reflections of Littjara can make that happen. Put a 1/1 counter on it, and then when it dies, deal damage equal to its power, divided as you choose amongst any number of targets. If we get this out on the board, our opponents are incentivized to kill it as fast as possible before we burn them all to death with it. Then we have Dreadhound. When it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, and whenever a creature dies or a creature is put into a graveyard from a library, each opponent loses 1 life. Just another way of slowly burning people out with our commander. And there's one thing demons are really good at doing, and that's attaching board wipes to big bodies for some reason. Beginning with Pestilence Demon, one of the 4 board wipe style effects in this deck. If it's on the board, pay 1 black mana, deal 1 damage to every creature and each player. Just a perfect little card to drop on everyone. Malfagor as well. When it enters the battlefield, discard our hand. Each opponent will sack a creature for every card that was discarded this way. A huge board wipe, and we don't care about losing that many cards because we can always just play Malfagor, then play our commander afterwards to get our hand back. Then we have Orcus, the Prince of Undeath. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1. It costs 4 and X, so our X can either make every other creature lose XX, and then we lose X life, or we can return X creature cards with total mana value X from our graveyard to the battlefield, and they gain haste. This is primarily going to be used for board wiping, but there are niche scenarios late in the game where we can mana dump a lot of our rocks that are producing more than 1 mana into Orcus. Then we have the Archfiend of Sorrows. Anytime it enters the battlefield, creatures our opponent control get -2/-2, and it's not legendary, so we can get 2 of these on the board and keep them if Reflection of Littjara is on the board. So that is some of the ways we are going to be controlling people, but that's not all. We, of course, want more ways of controlling the board because it is important to us to always be the ones in control. We are demons. We want to make sure that our opponents are always on the shit end of any bargain that we possibly put them through. So let's look at our 10-card removal and interaction section, beginning with Gourmand. When you cast this spell, sack a creature. It's got flying and trample, and it enters the battlefield, making every opponent sacrifice a creature as well. And of course, if you have reflections, it's not legendary, so you just get 2 of these and just ruin everybody. You only ever have to pay that cost once, though. Meteor Golem, of course, my boy is here. Meteor Golem enters the battlefield, blowing up any non-land permanent an opponent controls. Grixis does struggle with the types of removal it has access to. So with red, it can kill artifacts. With blue, it can bounce non-land cards. And with black, it can kill enchantments, kind of. It's got like 3 cards total that can do it, so it is still important in Grixis to have cards like Meteor Golem that can just omni-wipe anything off the board. I will also always justify Meteor Golem in every deck I can ever put it in because I absolutely adore the card. Anyway, moving on to Abrade. Choose 1. It deals 3 damage to any creature, and then it lets us blow up an artifact if we choose that one instead. For 2 mana instant, it's just great. For 2 mana, we can also cast a negate, counter any non-creature spell. A very quick way to protect our board of demons. Speaking of demons, Demon of Loathing. When it does combat damage to a player, that player will sacrifice a creature. We also have Dark Intimations, makes every opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, then makes them discard a card, and then we return any creature or planeswalker from our graveyard to our hand, and then we get to draw a card. It's got another thing for Bolas planeswalkers. We don't care about bitch dragons here. Now we have Feed the Swarm, blow up a creature or an enchantment for 2 mana, and then we lose life equal to that card's mana value. Then we have Overseer of the Damned, a demon that can blow up any creature on the battlefield, and then if any non-token creatures and opponent controls die, we make 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. He just prints them out. Resculpt is an instant way to exile artifacts or creatures, and Shadowborn Demon can enter the battlefield, blowing up any non-demon creature. And at the beginning of our upkeep, if we have fewer than 6 creatures in our graveyards, we must sacrifice a creature, which doesn't hurt us too terribly much. Sometimes we just want those sacrifices to happen in a demon deck. Speaking of wanting those sacrifices to happen, let's move to our sack outlet section because we do sometimes want to just destroy our own things to get benefits from them. Beginning with Ayara, Widower of the Realm, we can sacrifice any other creature or artifact to deal X damage to an opponent and then gain X life, where X is the permanent's mana value. Our deck contains demons of very high mana value. It is a deck that is slow to get off the ground but has powerful haymakers when we can start playing cards. So Ayara is perfect here. Also, if we flip Ayara into her backside by paying 5 mana and 2 life, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we can return any artifact or creature from our graveyard to the battlefield and give it haste, and then exile it at the beginning of our end step. But of course, we're never going to get to that point because we're just going to sacrifice it with one of our other sack outlets, like Tarian's Journal, that lets us sacrifice another artifact or creature to draw a card at sorcery speed. Also, we can pay 2, discard our hand, which again doesn't hurt us too much because we have a draw commander, to flip Tarian's Journal into the Tomb of Aklazotz. The Tomb of Aklazotz can give us 1 black mana, or we can tap it to cast any creature spell from our graveyard this turn and give it a finality counter. It also turns it into a vampire, which is not super important, but the Tomb is absolutely wonderful at giving all of our demons a second chance at life on top of Ayara. Then we have the Apocalypse Demon. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in our graveyard. We have ways of sacking our hand. We have ways of self-milling. This card will work perfectly fine. At the beginning of our upkeep, we can tap Apocalypse Demon unless we sack another creature. Sometimes we don't care about tapping it, but oftentimes just being able to go, yeah, I'm just going to sacrifice a demon to keep this guy out if his numbers are bigger than theirs. That's fine. Then we have Hidetsugu Devouring Chaos. We can pay 1 black mana to sack any creature and scry 2, but the more interesting effect of it is we can pay 3, tap him, exile the top card of our library, and then play that card this turn. We get Impulse Draw out of him. If we exile a non-land card this way, Hidetsugu will deal damage equal to that card's mana value to any target. Our deck is filled with cards that cost a lot of mana. So just in general, being able to go like, yeah, I'm gonna tap this, kill a demon on my board, get some benefit from that. I'm gonna scry 2. I'm gonna look at the top. Oh, look, that's a big demon on top. I guess I'm just gonna put that card there for me to play and burn you for 7. That's just, he's good. I enjoy him a lot. But we're not done here, because we do have a lot of demons, and we don't want to always cast them for their cost. We want to throw them in the grave with our deck's effects, and then find some way instead to cheat them onto the board. So to do that, we have a 7-card reanimation package, beginning with Geth, the Thane of Contracts. He makes all of our other creatures get -1/-1, but that doesn't hurt too much, because we can pay 3 and tap him to get any creature from our graveyard and just put it on the battlefield for free. If it dies, it gets exiled instead, but that is still perfectly fine. Just recurable reanimation. Speaking of recurable animation, Altar of Baal. Exile a creature we control, return another creature from our graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. Now, usually with Altar of Baal, I don't like paying the 3 mana up front to get the 4/1 black skeleton creature token that you can get, but in this deck, because we are not running a huge token generation package, the Altar of Baal is going to have to create that token for us unless we've got fodder on the board. Oftentimes we will not, so it's going to be important to make that skeleton early. Then we have Victimize, sack a creature, get 2 from the graveyard. Wait to the slaughter. We can pay 5 mana, choose up to 2 creatures in the graveyard. An opponent chooses one of them, puts that card in our hand, and the other one goes on the battlefield under our control and gains haste and gets exiled at the beginning of the next end step. The reason this is in here, though, because it's a bit overcosted, is it's got flashback, so we can just get this effect from the graveyard, even if we self-mill. And then we have 1, 2, 3 cards that will automatically death blink any of our creatures if they die, which will give us benefits from the sacrificing. Anytime one of the creatures would die, this would just make them come right back onto the board after the death, which is perfectly fine by us. But that's not the only way we have to create blinking synergies in the deck. We also have this flicker section, which will let us blink our commander to get free draws back. It'll allow us to blink our demons to get damage back on people. This deck only really wants to have 1 or 2 demons on the board and then just abuse things like blinking. So let's go ahead and look at Melidor, Swift Savior. When it deals combat damage to a player, exile 1 creature you own and put it back on the battlefield. Very, very easy blink effect. Nephalia Smuggler, we can pay 3 mana to tap it, exile the creature we control, and put it back onto the battlefield under our control. Another easy blink effect. Blur, blink a creature, draw a card. Teferi's Time Boost, blink a creature, give it a 1/1 counter. Siren's Ruse, blink a creature. If it's a pirate, do extra shit. We don't have pirates, doesn't matter. Void Walk, blink a creature, and then attach it to a creature with the Cipher ability, and every time that creature swings, we get that blink ability again. And then Illusionist's Stratagem, blink 2 creatures, and then also draw a card when we activate this. And since we've got so many ways to make these things ETB, you'd think we had some creatures that care about ETB synergies, end of the battlefield synergies. And we do. So let's start with one of the easiest ones to just come on the board and give us free shit. The Nightmare Shepherd. When any non-token creature we control dies, we can exile it and then get a token copy of it that is a 1/1 Nightmare in addition to its other types. That'll give us 1 little bit of burn from our commander. It also will make sure that we get creature ETBs twice. Things like the Meteor Golem come to mind, as always. We can also use this to get another copy of our commander with a free draw attached to it. And if our commander gets exiled this way, it's fine. It just goes right back to the command zone. Then we have Gyruda, Doom of Depths. If it enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard, and then we get to put any creature with an even converted mana cost from among those, 16 cards onto the battlefield under our control. Sometimes that's going to be something we have, sometimes it's going to be something that somebody else has. But he's a demon kraken, so he fits. Then we have Mimic Vat. Anytime a non-token creature dies, we may exile it and then return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to the graveyard, so we can only ever have 1 card under it at a time. But the Mimic Vat, we can pay 3 and tap it to create a token that's a copy of whatever is under it. So, Gyruda. Just Mimic Vat with Gyruda is a very funny way to hurt people. If you Mimic Vat Gyruda and you've got, just the Dreadhound on the board at the time, you're just burning people a shit ton, because the Dreadhound is going, oh, you're milling a bunch of things? That's fine, I guess. Anytime one of those is put into the graveyard, everybody's burning for one. I guess, how many times are you getting Gyruda out? Enough? And then we have ways to make sure that we get those ETBs earlier. We have Sloppity Bilepiper, a demon that we can pay to and tap it to sack any creature and give the next creature spell we cast this turn. Cascade. Our deck is filled with creatures of high mana value, so we're going to be able to get a good spell off of this typically. We also have Herald of Tzeentch, a demon that just happens to have Cascade on him as well. I have these in the ETB synergy section because even though Cascade is not an ETB like Discover, these can trigger our other ETBs very, very easily. So, that said, we still haven't gotten to the Haymaker. The reason that we're shoving all of our shit in the graveyard and hurting our opponents. It's also the reason we want to be very careful with what we let go into exile during the game. We have Bringer of the Last Gift, a vampire demon that when he enters the battlefield, if we cast it, each player sacks all the creatures they have, and then each player will return all creatures from their graveyard that were not sacked that way to the battlefield. So, Bringer of the Last Gift, as long as we've got a bunch of demons in our graveyard, we'll just summon them all, and then our commander, if he's in the graveyard when that happens, he will pop on the board, and this will just end the game, functionally. As long as we've got 5 or 6 demons in the grave, our commander will see all of them hopping onto the battlefield at the same time and go, oh, I guess I can throw like 6 times 6, just 36 damage out, and however I care, to whomever. If you're late enough in the game where Bringer of the Last Gift is coming out, he's probably creating enough damage to just end the game right there. And of course, there are ways to go heavier into the self-mill strategy to make sure this happens more often. As for our land package, we have 20 basic lands, 5 islands, 5 mountains, and 10 swamps. We have 4 dual lands, Sunken Hollow, Smoldering Marsh, Shadowblood Ridge, and Darkwater Catacombs. And I'm hoping that the filter lands from Fallout get a little cheaper and that we maybe get more Tango lands later. But for now, we just have the 2. We also have 9 fetching lands, Panoramas in the form of Grixis, which gives us all of our colors, Esper and Jund, which give us 2 of our colors, and then Escape Tunnel, Evolving Wilds, and Terramorphic Expanse for coming into play tap lands, Shire Terrace and Promising Vein, which gives us all of our colors, and Myriad Landscape, which functions as a ramping land that gets us 2 basics. And in terms of Omni lands, we have Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, and Crypt of the Eternals. Crypt of the Eternals is an interesting one because even though it is a come into play and give you life land, it gives you whatever mana you are missing early in the game at the cost of 1 mana, but oftentimes you can just use it to get colorless mana later in the game when you've already gotten your colors. I like Crypt of the Eternals because there's really no downside to it. It doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. Like, it doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, and it gives you what you want, and it has a little bit of life gain attached to it. I don't think that it is that horrible for what it is. That said, if we were looking at upgrading our deck, starting with the sack outlet section, honestly, so when it comes to upgrading our deck, we've got a few areas we can go. We can either try to go higher into Blink, higher into Demons, or higher into Aristocrats. We can choose one of the lanes, or we can try to keep our deck exactly as we are with all of this. Sack outlets section, I would probably keep largely the same, but you can swap the Apocalypse Demon out for a Phyrexian Altar so that you have ways of getting that mana back. But if you do that, you probably want to make sure that you've got a higher amount of token production, which our current version of the deck does not use, so I wouldn't fiddle with the sack outlet section too much. They just happen to be incremental sack. As for removal and interaction, in this section, I would probably make sure that we've got a Chaos Warp, and that's just a couple more counter spells if you were trying to go further. Like Wash Away is never going to hurt, but try to make sure that you're not throwing away too many of the demons. You still need those. As for Reanimation, this one's pretty easy. These reanimate spells that only happen when a creature dies, we would replace with things like Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, Reanimate itself. All of those can come in instead of these guys here. And of course, just being able to have access to all of that, being able to have access to cheaper reanimation, incentivizes us to cheat demons out way easier. Our ramp section, I would honestly throw a Thran Dynamo in here. Like, as I'm upgrading the deck, moving the diamonds into their signet and their talisman counterparts, I would 100% add a Thran Dynamo here. Because the deck is just eating mana. It is killing itself to have the mana that it wants, and so you want to make sure that you've got ways of getting that mana as fast as possible. We don't really need more lords in the deck. Raphael is plenty in here. For the flicker section, though, cards like Voidwalk and Nephalia Smuggler can be swapped out for Thassa and Conjurer's Closet, respectively, because both of those will give us blinking effects that we can just have without having to sink mana into them or having to make sure that our creatures do not lose their ability to blink because of the Cipher. Of course, if we blink the creature with Cipher that Voidwalk has under it, then we will lose access to that Cipher, so we don't want that. As for ETB synergy, I would actually go up on clones. Give us more ways to abuse Gyruda and just focus on that. Like, cloning demons is not a bad strategy. The only problem is they're not demons as spells because we don't have access to, like, the changeling creatures that clone, like Morietta the Frost. So I would be a little wary, but I still would like to see them. As for our draw package, honestly, our draw package looks a little anemic because we are hedging our bets so heavily on getting all those demons out. I probably wouldn't change the draw package too terribly much, though certainly it wouldn't hurt to add in some looting effects like Matsulani the Door that draws and discards and then can become a graveyard engine later in the game. I wouldn't hate throwing that in a fuller power version of the deck. As for copies, I already mentioned putting some clones in the deck wouldn't hurt. It's not going to hurt you too terribly much to just make sure that you have copies of your demons. Your burn section, if you wanted to go just further into the burn strategy, then of course a Sir Conrad would not hurt, but I didn't want to add him in because he's not a demon himself, and it's hard to get away from... It's hard to find demons that just do the burn that the deck is wanting. But literally anything with demon stapled on it that has the ability to burn people, you could throw in here. Our board wipe section is already looking really, really good, especially since things like Pestilence Demon have ways of burning everybody on top of killing things. The only thing I would say is maybe add in a Massacre Worm in here as well. Even though Archvenosauros is a demon, having Massacre Worm on top of Archvenosauros means that you can add burn on top of the board wiping effect itself. So, that all said, I hope you guys enjoyed bel'akor, the Dark Master. He is a super, super fun commander. If you like big dirtly creatures, if you like just these massive, massive problematic beasts coming out and that you've got to constantly juggle, am I exiling something right now? Am I getting the best thing out of the deal that I'm making at the moment? Am I doing my best with the things I have? I wanted to keep the idea that the demon deck would not be a straightforward thing, that it was more of a contract you had to navigate, and if you fuck it up, the contract goes wrong. I liked that idea in the theming of the deck, so I wanted to try to keep that in the build of the deck. And I hope I succeeded with that. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And as always, everybody, thank you all for getting this channel as far as it has. And I hope to see you in the next one. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.